What is your price? Because if your price is not your life, then you are for sale. Welcome back to the Price is My Life podcast. A big thank you to today's sponsors, American Independence Gold and Impact Health Sharing, two partners who share a commitment to protecting what matters most, your health today and your future tomorrow. We appreciate their support. We appreciate you for staying engaged with us here in studio in West Palm Beach, Florida. We're talking to Graham. And how do I pronounce your last name?
Linehan, with the soft I.
I always ask. Say that again.
Linehan.
Linehan.
Yeah, and I'm asked to pronounce it so much that even I have trouble with it now.
It's like, it's not, it's at least it's not, it's like O'Keefe. Oh, I'm Irish. And the apostrophe always messes up in airports and hotels.
Right. Yeah.
You can't get the internet.
Well, I thought Linehan was bad, and then I came over and started saying Graham to Americans. It's like the word. It's like the name has never existed over here.
Linehan.
Yeah.
See, that's different than how I was going to pronounce it.
Linehan. Yeah, that's it.
So Graham Linehan is an award-winning Irish comedy writer and television creator whose work shaped some of the most beloved sitcoms in British and Irish television history. But in the late 2010s, Linehan began publicly speaking out about women's rights, particularly the inclusion of transgender women in female spaces and medical transition in minors. What began as public criticism of gender ideology quickly escalated into one of the most high-profile cultural and professional collapses tied to this debate. Now, critics argue instead that his rhetoric has been harmful towards transgender people, blah, 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 and that the backlash he faced reflects accountability, not persecution. But his story sits at the intersection of free speech, cultural power, public punishment, and the price of refusing to back down. Welcome to The Price is My Life.
Thank you, James.
Welcome to Florida.
Here. Thank you. Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Everyone talks about weather. You live in Arizona, so
this is actually
heat.
This is actually a little cold for
me.
This
is cold. You got the breeze coming off the water here.
Yeah,
in West Palm
it's very nice. I can see why you're based here.
People always talk about weather. I like the fact that the FBI isn't raiding me. Right?
And I have the same thing about the UK police, And
how long have you been in the United States?
Since March last year.
Since March?
Yeah.
Been here for about a year.
About there.
And how's it going living in the U.S.?
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, towards the end of living in the UK, I felt, this may sound like an exaggeration, but I'd begun to feel slightly hunted, the police, when I was arrested, we'll move on to that, I'm sure, but I was arrested at Heathrow Airport recently, and the feeling there was not like, what a surprise to be arrested at the airport. The feeling was as soon as the plane was lingering a bit too long on the tarmac, I knew I was going to be arrested, And it's crazy. I'm a comedy writer who supports women's rights. It's the most insane thing that's ever happened to me.
That fear of about to be arrested.
Yes, and I don't have that here, and that means I'm able to write for the first time in ages. I've been more productive in the last year over here than I was in the UK for about 10 years.
So most of your life, you were known for making people laugh. And then we're talking about some very serious stuff right here. By the way, I know what it's like to be on an airplane about to be arrested.
Oh, yeah?
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe it's less terrifying the second or third time, but the first time.
First time, yeah. Although, to be honest with you, the whole, again, I can't help seeing the comedy because the whole thing is so absurd. There's a side of me that always just has to sit back and laugh at it, you know? And I'd never get too scared because I always just think, no, someone's gonna reveal this is all a prank at some point.
There's a lot of absurdity and irony in your situation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of absurdity and irony in reality. You were one of the most successful comedy writers in Ireland. Father Ted, Black Books, the IT Crowd, and that became part of the culture. And now here you are. And what's the biggest thing you've learned?
Oh my God, that's a good question. Well, the word, the way we all thought that we all like to flatter ourselves in believing that we won't be the guy who does the Heil Hitler salute. We'll be the guy in the crowd who is the one guy who doesn't do it. That's going to be us. And you saw it all over the internet. That photograph, that famous photograph of the guy not saluting, and And it's always accompanied by some kind of message like, be this guy, you know? But of course, like, it didn't even take Nazis to get people to you know, turn me in. It took a bunch of blue-haired lunatics who had cooked all this stuff up on Tumblr in 2015, you know? So it's like, if you can't stand up to a bunch of students who've just come up with this cockamamie idea, how are you going to stand up to, you know, when the fascists start knocking on the door?
Yeah, everyone thinks that they're the one who would be opposed to Hitler, as Jordan Peterson says.
Yeah, absolutely, that's it.
So,
and you know, sorry, James, to interrupt, but I understand that someone said it's a big misconception that people think that there was no fight back against the Nazis in Germany because they would kill you. But it's not true. The problem was you would not get a promotion. You might lose your job.
That's right.
Yeah. So these are the same things that people are worried about now.
Just their own paycheck, basically.
Yeah, and they throw you under the bus as soon as it becomes expedient to do so.
It doesn't seem like it costs. It doesn't seem like people. I say the price is my life is the whole concept we're talking about. It doesn't seem like it's people's life. It's usually like $80,000 or something, or 60. I don't know what that translates
How do you mean?
to. I mean the paycheck that people get to
Yes.
support their family and pay the mortgage and
absolutely.
whatever that is, whether it's 60,000, 80,000, 100,000 a year, at least.
And also these people who I used to be friends with, all these comedy writers, and who are all doing very well now, very comfortable in their lives and so on. You know, it would not have taken anything for them to have just said some basic stuff like, of course women deserve fair sport. Mm-hmm. Of course we shouldn't be pumping kids full of cross-sex hormones. These are very simple things to say, and yet it was beyond all of them, you know?
Mm. So in 2018, everything began to shift for you. Is that was about that?
Around then, yeah.
You went from being known as a comedy writer to being known as a combatant in all this stuff. Mm. And in 2018, when a dispute on Twitter escalated far beyond social media and to police involvement, let's take a look at that. This is 101. The Guardian.
Oh, yeah.
Graham given police warning after complaint by transgender activist. West Yorkshire Force tell father Ted co-writer not to contact Stephanie Hayden after now on Twitter. And then let's go to 102. This is a pull quote. Dead naming. You've been given a verbal warning by police after complaint by a tranny activist. Told by police not to contact. Reported him for transphobia after referred to as a he. And for dead naming. I'm sorry to say, pardon my ignorance. I've never heard of that before.
Oh, really?
I truly haven't seen that word.
That was one of the big taboos. Dead naming.
Dead naming.
Yeah, along with misgendering, it's a big taboo.
Is that like a British word, an Irish?
No, it comes from kind of American activism, you know?
I must have missed that one.
Yeah.
The pair had been involved in a dispute on Twitter about gender identity, resulting in the writer retweeting a post to his... You have quite a few followers.
Mm. I lost 300,000 followers when I started talking about this stuff.
You lost followers?
Yeah, about 300 to 400,000.
But you also had people that DM'd you privately and said, keep it up, buddy. And
funnily enough, not much.
No?
No. Like the cutting me off was complete. I was cut off by everybody. And if I spoke to some of my old friends, they just wouldn't reply.
And what about, well, then I guess they weren't really friends.
Well, that's what I've been learning. Yeah.
That's what you learn in life, right?
Yeah. And I should say, this transgender activist and the discussion about gender wasn't about gender. This guy was a serial fraudster who had changed his name multiple times. And because he changed his name to a woman's name, now he's able to get the police now he's able to cry hate crime whenever anyone tries to expose what he's up to, you know? And this guy has basically been suing me for the last 10 years off and on. I've not been out of litigation since I started this. And to be fair, James, you know, I understand you know the inside of a courtroom and a legal case, but you're doing like pretty big stuff, you know. I'm literally just saying that women deserve single-sex spaces.
What we're going to get to this, but tell us, since you brought up litigation, what litigation are you involved in right now?
Right now, I'm being sued by a Scottish actor who's also a trans activist who is trying to sue me on the basis of what I've written about him, which we can completely prove.
In British court?
Yeah, which we can prove is all true.
Does truth matter in British court? by and large.
Yeah,
and that's an
no, it
existential
does.
question.
It does. I mean, the one good thing about the UK is, despite the level of capture, which is really extraordinary, it goes through all of. Do you know what I mean by capture?
I think so, but
Yeah,
tell
gender
the
ideology
audience.
capture. I mean, like institutions across the UK now believe that there are more than two sexes. I can't even believe I'm saying this. More than two sexes, and that everyone has a gender identity, and blah 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 blah. And so they're operating from that principle, but what tends to happen is that everyone plays along to them until they get to the courtroom. And then when they get to the courtroom, they're just humiliated because none of their positions stack up, you know? Like, you know, if you say to them, oh, I don't know, you know, the idea that they will actually float ideas like there's no physical difference between men and women as regards sport, for instance, you know? And you know, you just have to be alive to know that's not true. You don't need evidence.
So the courts are generally protective of the truth. I would think differently.
Yes, they are. At the very end, I have to say, the one good thing about the UK is that every time we've had to take things to court, it usually goes our way. But the problem is we have to take them to court all the time. I don't know whether you noticed, but recently the Supreme Court in the UK ordered that when it comes to single-sex spaces, sex means sex. It doesn't mean gender. It means that if you're a woman, you get to go into the ladies. If you're a man, you go into the gents. That's it, right? The British government refused to implement this. This is the law of the land handed down by the Supreme Court, and they refuse to implement it because they're all captured. You know, it's an extraordinary situation.
And your lawsuits right now, you're in one lawsuit, two lawsuits? Or?
One lawsuit. Just that Stephanie Hayden bloke just recently.
How are you paying the legal bills?
Another one.
Is a lawyer doing it pro bono?
Yeah, look, well, yeah, I mean, I have two great lawyers, or a few great lawyers. Most of them are doing it because they agree with me and they do it cheaply. But also, I just have to, every so often, I just have to ask people if they'll be kind enough to add some money to
donate to it.
Yeah.
Donate. Philanthropy.
Yeah.
And that's how they get you, right? The process is the punishment.
Exactly.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
And and I don't like asking for money, you know. I don't like having to do that. If these guys would leave me alone, they wouldn't hear from me. But unfortunately, all these guys are just the most terrible bullies. The bloke who's suing me, there was a gay magazine called Boys, and this ran for 15 years. And then one day, the editor of the magazine wrote a tweet saying something like, let's hear what the LGB Alliance have to say, which is like a gay group who are trying to remove themselves from the T, you know. And overnight, the guy who's suing me destroyed this guy's business. Just overnight. Just rang up all the promoters, all the advertisers who were working with him, told them not to work with him, and they destroyed his business. So he's going to be appearing in court on my behalf. I don't understand why he's doing it. It's insane.
What went through your mind when you realized the police were now involved?
Now, which one is this? At the airport?
When the Guardian did their thing with the police warning.
Oh, well, it's funny, but the police warning, again, as I say, I knew this guy was just a fraudster. And when they rang me, I thought they were going to investigate him. That's how naive I was.
Being naive is not good, right?
Yeah, not very good.
Jordan Peterson says it's not wise. I mean, looking back, was that the moment you realized that the issue could bring state pressure into your life?
Yeah, but I didn't even think it was so crazy. I mean, I hope you find a picture of Stephanie Hayden and flash a picture of him.
We will.
Because when you see what he looks like, you will see how insane this whole thing is.
This is James O'Keefe. You know me for exposing the truth and holding the corrupt elite accountable. But today I want to talk to you about protecting your own freedom, your retirement. Now, gold is soaring above $4,200 an ounce right now and climbing towards $5,000. That's up over 45% this year alone, with silver closing in on $60 an ounce. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and major banks are now forecasting gold between $5,000 and $6,000 within the next 6 to 12 months. And that's why I've partnered with American Independence Gold, a veteran-owned company where proceeds from every sale help support the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. And right now, my followers get a free gold bar with every purchase of $10,000 or more. Go to O'KeefeMediaGold.com, that's O'KeefeMediaGold.com, or call 833-324-4653. That's 833-324-GOLD. This is James O'Keefe, where freedom isn't given, it's secured. This is not financial advice. Consult a professional before making investment decisions. All right, let's talk healthcare, because the system is a total mess. Do you really trust your insurance company? You're paying outrageous premiums, and months later, the bills still keep coming. Confusing networks, denied claims, surprise fees. Now rates they're saying might go up 20% or more. And did you know that medical debt is the #1 cause of bankruptcy? Those are some of the many reasons why I suggest switching from traditional health insurance to Impact Health Sharing. Impact Health Sharing is a powerful health sharing community that takes the middleman and the corporate profit-driven bureaucracies out of your healthcare and puts the power back in your hands. You can save up to 50% and get clear costs, real savings, and no woke nonsense. You can pick any doctor, no surprise bills, 24/7 telehealth, maternity support. Take control of your healthcare before the system decides for you. Go to impactomg.com to learn more and get your free quote in seconds, or call 855-378-6777 now. That's impactomg.com, impactomg.com. Impact Health Sharing, built differently.
And yet it's still happening. And then you have in Australia, I don't know if you know this story, there's a woman who tried to open a woman-only app, right? So girls could get together and do things like organize car shares, try and get rentals together, all that sort of stuff. Lovely idea. And this guy called Roxy Tickle, who looks like Bill Sykes from Oliver.
That's quite a name.
Yeah, it's a porno name. They're all porn obsessed, these guys. And he tried to get in, and when he couldn't get in, he's suing her. So this has been something like 4 years. He's had her held up, tied up in court, trying to get this huge strapping bloke off her woman-only app. And the Australian government actually said in the first time round, they said, yes, he's a woman. You have to let him in. So she's going back to appeal. I mean, this is where we are now. Australia is possibly about to say that there is no such thing as women. There's only like men and this other group that men can also be a part of, you know? And it's like we're all just floating into it.
Yeah.
You know?
Where do you think it's all headed? What's the destination of this? Is there going to be a pendulum swing back, or is it going to get worse?
Well, you guys gave us the pendulum swing back. Trump has been brilliant on this, you know, like fixing women's sports, stopping mutilation and sterilization of children. He's been amazing. I've gone from, I was telling you earlier, James, like I used to think the right in the US were just either crazy or evil or stupid. That was the way I thought, because I was a left-wing, liberal, progressive guy, so I thought. And then my own side started coming out with this stuff. And
when you say your side, what do you mean?
You know, liberals, progressives. They started coming out with this stuff, and I realized very quickly that not only was I wrong about them, but I was wrong about everyone.
It's rare that someone changes their mind.
Well, you have to be really fucking kicked in the teeth by the left before you wake up sometimes. You know.
Was it a day? Was it over a period of time? Was it all of a sudden?
Yeah, period of time. And then I started looking back at people who I'd always assumed were evil, like you. Like I remember when you were.
You thought I was evil?
Well, I remember you. Didn't you do a story on Planned Parenthood?
Yeah, it was in 2007.
Yeah, and wasn't it about something like baby parts?
That was David Daleiden, who I wasn't the one who actually did that one.
Right. But it was Project Veritas?
It was David Daleiden working for his own NGO. But I have talked to David Daleiden. I did videos on Planet before then, but I know what you're talking about.
Well, I was, you know, I
It was
marched.
2015.
Yeah. And basically, I remember the baby parts, selling baby parts thing, and I thought that is so obviously untrue and so obviously a lie that this is like clearly just a sort of trolling exercise.
When you say so obviously untrue,
yes.
Why did you? It's on
because
video.
it seemed so absurd and evil and sort of cartoonishly evil. I didn't accept it could be happening.
So people believe what they want to believe, basically.
Yeah, and also, and you know, then I had a similar experience, right? Because I would be telling people things like, for instance, this is absolutely true, that WPath links to a website called the Eunuch Archives, which is like a bunch of short stories about castration. Okay, this is supposedly the world leader in trans healthcare, okay? And the stories are all porno stories about castration. 40%, there's 4,000 stories, 40% of them are tagged minor. That's WPATH is linking to this website. So I say stuff like that, and people think I'm crazy, and that I'm making it up, and that, something just clicked within me. But it's like, no, just because I'm telling you all this stuff, like it's not me engaging in it. I'm just simply telling you what's happening. But they won't accept it. They'd rather think I've gone crazy.
This is the one thing that's really important you're talking about in America. It's like I've done these videos, and what's different about video is that it's incontrovertible. You can't debate it. It's not me. I mean, this is new. I'm new to the podcast. I told you before we started, you're about the 20th or the 21st guest we've had. I do deep dive investigative journalism, and it's self-evident. It's first-person observation journalism.
Yes.
It's not me telling you about abortion. Frankly, I don't express my opinion on it. And yet, even though you see it and they're talking about it, you still don't believe it because it doesn't reconcile with your at the time.
Yeah, or simply you've just chosen, and I think this was true of me, you've just chosen a number of journalistic sources that you will believe stuff from them. Okay?
I see.
And I used to think that, and so I was believing things like the Daily Cause, Media Matters. When it came to America, because I was fascinated by American politics.
In Britain, you were watching the Media Matters.
Yeah, no, I was
because they're far left.
They're lunatics. but again, I don't know.
So you went to like MediaMatters.whatever it is .com.
Yeah, I had like all these different websites up. Also, there were people, there were websites like Boing Boing and kind of alternative websites.
Did you get your news from the BBC?
A little bit, yeah. I trusted the BBC, which I don't anymore. I mean, the whole thing. It was just. I now realise, right, that if we don't do something about the level of trust in news gathering, and if we don't do something about the like the New York Times today described the bomb that was thrown in New York as something like a package wrapped with explosives. It's like, it's a bomb. Why are you lying to your readers? Yeah. There's all sorts of these things, and they keep going on. And
it's confirmation bias, isn't it? Because the New York Times doesn't want to piss on their audience, so to speak.
Sure.
They don't want to give them facts that are irreconcilable with their own audience's worldview.
Yeah, I know, and that's what I'm talking about. We're losing the ability to know what's real because we don't,
Speaking of the BBC featured you in a segment that drew complaints. This is 2020 now, after you compared doctors treating trans-identifying children to Nazi-era experimentation. I think we have a little clip.
Oh, God, do I have to watch this again?
This is 103. BBC
But what
Nazis.
about comparing people in the trans debate to speaking out against Nazis? I mean, that's pretty extreme.
Well, there's a couple of parallels. One is that at the moment, children are basically being experimented on with puberty blockers. For instance...
Come on, you're not seriously trying to say that children going to the doctor and saying that they're worried about their gender is akin to children being experimented on in Nazi concentration camps?
I'm afraid I am, because Lupron, which is a drug that's supposed to be meant for end-stage cancer prostate cancer treatment, is being given to young girls. It has never been tested on girls. It has never been tested on women. That's happening to young women at the moment.
There's a couple of issues here. One of them is that these are doctors who are doing this, and you don't have any medical training to know about this. But the other is that they are doing it by choice. It is deeply offensive to compare this to Nazi concentration camps.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. I'm not comparing it to Nazi concentration camps.
If you want to have a reasonable debate about what's going on with gender identity in this country, we can't talk about Nazis in the same breath.
The thing about the Nazi comment was what I was trying to get across was that this is a hinge moment in history, just like during the Nazis. And we always ask ourselves the same questions. We ask ourselves, what would I have done? Would I have bowed down? Would I have done everything I was told to do? Or would I have resisted? Would I have stood up, and would I have stood up alongside people who are trying to do the right thing? That's what I'm trying to do at the moment. And it's being made very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's quite a. I mean, were you feeling that adrenaline in that moment?
Oh yeah, you can see my knee.
Yeah,
my knee going.
Your knee was shaking. I mean, it's tough. This is difficult.
I'm so naive throughout all of this. You know, outside the BBC, there's a statue of George Orwell, and it says something like, you know, we must have the right to offend, you know, or something. I can't remember the exact quote, but you know, it's something about telling the truth even though it causes people pain or something like this, or causes people discomfort. And I took a picture of myself beside that quote, as if you know the BBC was still living by that rule. But then I went in, I found out I had 5 minutes, and she immediately took this attitude with me, and I realized, oh, this is just a hit job, you know. So yeah, I was actually kind of proud of myself. I think I stood up for myself pretty well. At one point, she said, I was so frustrated, I sort of shouted, you know, you don't tell kids they've been born in the wrong body because they're kids and they will believe you, you know. And so I got a couple of things out, but in general, that's the attitude that I've had from the very start of this. And the BBC is very, very captured, you know.
And you didn't apologize, though. You didn't back down.
No, and in fact, the first vaginoplasty, which is the most common procedure used in trans surgeries, was performed by a guy called Erwin Gobhardt, who was in the Luftwaffe and tortured people in I think it was Dachau, you know. So it's not even a weak connection. It's a very strong connection. It's like, there's your trans history, you know.
What's that statement that eventually all debates descend into comparing things to Nazism? Eventually,
yeah, but then again, you do have to say to yourself at times, like, if we are to learn the lessons of the past, how can we apply them without saying this is like the past? You know, like the whole of the trans movement, for me, has been almost like a hypnosis. Like, everyone's been put under hypnosis, you know, and the only way to kind of break out of it is by breaking it very forcefully, by ignoring all the taboos and by talking about it openly and by not being afraid of the conversation. Of course, I found I should have had every reason to be afraid.
Did you make any mistakes during this time?
Yeah, plenty. But again,
what was the biggest mistake you made?
Oh, trusting people to tell the story. I've trusted so many journalists who just turned around and used it to frame me a certain way. You know,
trusting the media to represent you fairly and accurately.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a lot of it was just you being naive.
Yeah.
Not knowing the ways of how they process information and spin.
But also, I didn't think they would be quite so eager to destroy me so utterly, to remove all my ways of making a living. You know, I thought that, oh, there'll be someone there who will write a fair piece about me or something. But no, in the end, I had to do everything myself, you know.
Wow.
But it wasn't until I was arrested that things really took off.
And speaking of the arrest, let's move on to that. Yeah. This is AP News. Arrest over a transgender post sparks free speech outcry in the United Kingdom. And just last year, is that right? September 2025? Yeah. You were arrested by the Metropolitan Police under, quote, suspicion of inciting violence.
Yes.
In posts on X. Speaking of George Orwell. You then wrote about the experience on Substack. This is 105. I just got arrested again. I arrived back in London to discover the UK is still a police state run by trans activists. The civility of individual officers doesn't alter the fundamental reality of what happened. They were civil?
Yeah, they were fine. In fact, they were kind of excited to meet me because they all liked Father Ted, you know?
They liked you while they put the handcuffs on you?
Yeah, absolutely. You know,
they're just doing their jobs, right?
Just doing their jobs.
Did they say, quote, I'm just doing my job?
No, they didn't.
That'd be kind of funny.
But I did realize I couldn't take them to task for what was going on. I mean, it was so absurd.
They're just following orders.
Just following orders. The guy who interviewed me was Polish. He was a Polish policeman. And I thought, hang on a second. Even people with English as their first language don't understand this issue, don't understand the difference between, you know, someone saying that your sex is assigned at birth and someone saying your sex is observed at birth. Then how is this guy going to do it? How's this guy going to tease out all this, you know? So, I mean, it's just an insane situation in the UK at the moment. And Starmer is this guy who basically ran on a platform of saying he was going to end the culture wars. And of course he didn't. He just hid from them. And so the people who are fighting the culture wars are, I don't know whether you saw, but the recent nurses who had to take the NHS to court to stop them from forcing them to undress in front of men, you know, two different, one group of nurses, another single nurse had to fight that. It just, I don't know, it just goes on, you know.
So you arrested in an airport like a terrorist, locked in a cell like a criminal. This is when the plane was, you were landing, and you how did you?
I was coming back for a different trial.
And how did you know that you were about to be arrested?
Because the plane paused, and I just knew as soon as the plane paused. I don't know how I knew, but I knew.
You knew
that I was going to be arrested.
What do you mean the plane paused? What do you mean?
You know the way usually when a plane comes to a stop, there's like a 2 minutes and then you're up on your feet, and there was like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then when it turned into an extended wait, I knew I was going to hear my name come out over the tannoy, and sure, and then a second later it did.
And the name came out, and then what happened?
They just said, present yourself to the front of the plane. So I got all my stuff, and I went to the front of the plane. There were 5 cops outside, all of them armed, which is normal for Heathrow Airport, but still strange to meet, you know. And they brought me off to a side room and started talking to me. And I can't remember. For some reason, I knew I was going to be spoken to and taken to one side, but for some reason, I didn't have it in my head that I was going to be arrested.
All right, let's talk healthcare, because the system is a total mess. Do you really trust your insurance company? You're paying outrageous premiums, and months later, the bills still keep coming. Confusing networks, denied claims, surprise fees, now rates they're saying might go up 20% or more. And did you know that medical debt is the #1 cause of bankruptcy? Those are some of the many reasons why I suggest switching from traditional health insurance to Impact Health Sharing. Impact Health Sharing is a powerful health sharing community that takes the middleman and the corporate profit-driven bureaucracies out of your healthcare and puts the power back in your hands. You can save up to 50% and get clear costs, real savings, and no woke nonsense. You can pick any doctor, no surprise bills, 24/7 telehealth, maternity support. Take control of your healthcare before the system decides for you. Go to impactomg.com to learn more and get your free quote in seconds, or call 855-378-6777 now. That's impactomg.com, impactomg.com. Impact Health Sharing, built differently. This is James O'Keefe. You know me for exposing the truth and holding the corrupt elite accountable. But today I want to talk to you about protecting your own freedom, your retirement. Now, gold is soaring above $4,200 an ounce right now and climbing towards $5,000. That's up over 45% this year alone, with silver closing in on $60 an ounce. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and major banks are now forecasting gold between $5,000 and $6,000 within the next 6 to 12 months. And that's why I've partnered with American Independence Gold, a veteran-owned company where proceeds from every sale help support the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. And right now, my followers get a free gold bar with every purchase of $10,000 or more. Go to O'KeefeMediaGold.com, that's O'KeefeMediaGold.com, or call 833-324-4653. That's 833-324-GOLD. This is James O'Keefe, where freedom isn't given, it's secured. This is not financial advice. Consult a professional before making investment decisions.
And when they actually started reading my rights, I got so angry, I nearly became a control problem. And they were I have to say, they were good in the sense that they realized it would pass, and they just kept me there. And then I said to them, all right, let's just get on with it. And we went down. They brought a van onto the tarmac so that I wouldn't be walked in handcuffs through the airport.
Did they handcuff you?
No. In fact, yeah, and then when they put me in the little, I think because they have to, they put me in the little prisoner transport, which is like a little white cage in the back of the van. And that was funny because I was sitting there thinking, well, here we are. This is where it's always been heading. No, not scared at all.
No fear?
No, not at all. I was so excited about writing that piece. and telling everybody.
You're excited about telling the story.
Yeah, because I knew it would just blow people's minds that I had been arrested.
You were excited about the story of it, the information to the public. People need to see and know this.
Yes, and so it proved, like, I wouldn't be on this show if it hadn't been for it.
It's true.
I spoke in front of Congress. I'm going back to Washington tomorrow.
U.S. Congress.
Yeah. None of this would have happened without being arrested.
And you kind of intuitively knew that in the moment.
Yeah.
But you still have been subjected to your career in making the living part of things.
Sure.
It's always the money. It's in other words, and that's true for the people the bad guys too. They do things to earn a living.
Yeah.
So did that go through your mind when this happened?
No, I mean, I'm not sure what happened. I think I just look. For the last 10, the reason I do all this, the money is what I need to live. It's very just basically
We all need that.
Absolutely. But the reason I've been doing this for 10 years was simply to get these stories out, to say they're hurting kids, they're hurting women. The women who stand up are losing their jobs for standing up to it. And that's all I ever wanted to do, was draw attention to the wider issue. And yeah, that's what happened, So the being arrested in that sense was good,
Let's look at the tweets that, for those of you who are not familiar, the center of the arrest. Tell me if I'm wrong. April 20th, 2025. This is fairly recently. You went through all this, by the way.
Oh yeah.
I find it takes.
It's only a few months. Yeah.
I find it takes a few years to really put things in full
Sure.
perspective and context.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I was talking to Yeonmi Park this morning, the North Korean defector, and her book reminds me of Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And eventually, when you go through so much pain and so much just injustice, this was an injustice again. This would not happen to you if you're an American, by the way.
Yeah.
This sort of thing probably wouldn't happen to you. But eventually, you do not rejoice when you. What's the quote, Solzhenitsyn? You don't rejoice when you win or weep when you lose. You just have a steadiness about you.
That's
when you go through
Yeah.
a lot of injustice.
Yeah.
Except, Naomi Park says, except when they go after your family.
Yeah.
Are you married?
I was married. The trans activists released my home address online.
When did you get divorced?
Just, I don't know, about 5 years ago, something like
5
that.
years
6
ago.
years ago. Yeah.
So they released your address.
They released my address online. They called the police to our house multiple times. The pressure of it. Helen was also being contacted by our so-called friends, telling them to have nothing to do with me, telling her to have nothing to do with me. I don't think even a marriage,
Can withstand it?
Even if things were, and we had all the normal problems you have in a marriage after a number of years, but basically you're able to tolerate them because I was earning a living, but then when you stop earning a living, all that disappears from underneath you, and so all you're left with is your personality.
Is that the greatest price you've had to pay? Losing your
I'd
wife?
say so.
And do you have kids?
Yeah, still very close to my kids.
How old are they?
They're now 20 and 18.
So, that is tough. It's tough for anybody. Tommy Robinson told me he the greatest price he paid was losing his wife, and although he said that she made the right decision to leave this tumultuous life.
And I do have sympathy. Like once society decides you're evil, and once like the entire of the kind of fourth estate is kind of reporting on you based on this. I don't know. I'm not as familiar with Tommy Robinson's stuff, but I do know that the reason he got the reputation he did originally was because he was one of the first people to talk about the grooming gangs. And the grooming gangs is still the greatest bit of British scandal, and there still hasn't been enough justice, enough of an explanation as to why those girls were treated the way they were. But it's so hard to figure out what the truth is about someone like Tommy Robinson, because because the press make it so difficult, you know?
You're talking about the British press in
Yes.
particular.
Yes.
Yeah, because Tommy got here to America and he was like, I feel just, when people don't judge. And so in Britain, and I don't know, I haven't spent a lot of time in the United Kingdom, but they judge you based on how you talk. There's a class system.
Yeah.
And the way he talks is different than the upper class person. But in America, people aren't going to make that type of judgment about you here.
Yeah. It's such a different ecosystem here. I'm still trying to figure it out. But yeah, you're absolutely right. One of the big things, and this goes for the gender discussion as well, but gender and racism the discussion is absolutely dominated by, what I would call the cultural regime, the cultural elite, and there really is no other way of thinking. Anyone who thinks a different way is immediately cast out. It's, I compare it to, did you ever see the Hunger Games?
Yes.
The city where they all live and dress like Vivienne Westwood? That's what the UK elite are like.
It was like Davos, Switzerland. I went to World Economic Forum undercover, and I felt that. I felt a particular type of darkness and ugliness there.
I find, when you see like celebrities with trans children and so on, I genuinely believe they're trying to create an aristocracy. Do you know what I mean?
Perhaps they are.
Because it's like, oh well, my child is. If you're a parent of and you say to school your child is trans, they immediately get extra attention, extra care. No one bullies them. Everything's rosy for them. It's like a ticket. And then once you get past that, as you can see, someone like Elon Musk's son, who has no discernible talent, and yet is this sort of famous guy on the fashion circuit because they like parading them to troll Elon.
And it was Elon's platform. Let's pull the tweets back up that brought you to the center of this whole controversy. Punch him in the balls. 107. If a trans-identified male is in a female in any space, he is committing a violent, abusive act. Make a scene, call the cops, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls.
Yeah. Good advice for any young woman.
For sure. 108. This is a photo you can smell. They got you in trouble for this one?
Yeah.
What was the logic behind this? There's no punch him in the balls.
I don't know. I don't know.
What's the issue? What's the problem?
Yeah, and it's only based on my lived experience with trans activists.
They smell?
They do smell.
What do they smell like?
They smell of unwashed apartments and just kind of student life,
Do you think that trans people should be allowed to not go into the bathrooms, but if they want to chop off their penis and they're 30 years old or 25 years old, do you think they have a right to do that?
I don't think. I think the thing is, anyone can stop. No one can stop them. If they want to do it, they can do it.
Because I agree that you shouldn't do it to children. If you're an adult and you want to,
but why would you want to?
Well, I have no idea. I'm just asking you a different question. Should they be allowed to?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll say yes simply because. It's a hard thing.
It's a tough question.
Look, here's the thing. About 20, 30 years ago, I saw a documentary about these guys who felt that they needed to cut their legs off. They had some sort of mental condition whereby they thought their legs were alien to them and they wouldn't be happy unless they cut their legs off. So this documentary that a friend of mine actually worked on, called Horizon in the UK, it followed these guys around and interviewed them, and they did the operation and spoke to them afterwards. And they cut their legs off. And then afterwards, they were interviewed. And I always found it really funny in a terribly dark way. But they were interviewed and they said, so what do you think now that you've had the operation? And they were like, oh, that was a terrible mistake.
They always regret
I really
it.
shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. You think they do it to be different?
But well, it's not that. It's they had a what's that word when an intrusive
Epiphany?
thought. No, an intrusive thought. And I know a trans-identified guy, a friend of mine, named Debbie Hayden, and he says that the moment he heard it was possible to cut your penis off and become a woman, he couldn't think about anything else until he did it. So the thing, so the moment he heard about it, that's the key part.
The moment he heard about it, it was almost like a hypnotic hypnosis.
It's like an intrusive thought, and he got it done, and I don't think he's happy he got it done.
I don't think a lot of people can relate to that.
No, but the problem is, right, that yeah, we can't relate to it, but there's a whole kind of infrastructure of teachers and college professors who are saying that this is actually a great way to deal with your problems. If you don't like a certain thing, cut it off, you know? And the idea...
But not everyone sitting in that classroom will have that happen to them. Only a percentage of people.
Sure.
Even a substantial minority of people.
Yeah, and 95% of men who call themselves trans, this is why I don't accept the term trans people, never have any procedure done to them. You know, they're literally just cross-dressers, or what we used to call transvestites.
Yes.
But for some reason, they've been, well, I'll tell you what the reason is. Because this is, to me, a men's rights movement, a sort of dishonest men's rights movement, they have deliberately confused their problems with the problems of transsexuals, which are very different. Do you know what I mean?
No, explain that.
Well, if you're transgender, that just involves saying I'm trans. It doesn't require any surgery. It doesn't require any drugs. But if you're transsexual, well, then you've really done it. You've cut your penis off. You've done whatever it takes to transform into a different person. It doesn't actually do that to you. But for some reason, doctors are telling these poor, unfortunate people that it does, that it will help them, when in fact it increases suicidal ideation.
I was undercover in D.C. with this one guy, and he said that he had bottom surgery.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that phrase?
Yes.
So many people in my audience and on my team had no idea what the hell he was talking about. Now, I was undercover, so I have to pretend like I do know what he's talking about. Now, what I couldn't figure out is whether he's a guy who turned into a girl, or a girl who turned into a guy.
I think if it's a guy who turned into a girl, it's probably by bottom surgery basically just means either vaginoplasty or...
Right.
You know, so, but if it's a girl, then, well, you know what they do to the girls. You may not know this, James. That's one thing I've always felt. You've been, over here, you've been so great on the trans issue, but there's still so much stuff that conservatives don't know. And I don't know where you know this, but you know how they make a penis for a woman?
Remind us.
They cut, like a bit of turf, they cut a section of your thigh or your leg from your leg, and they roll it up. And they call that a penis. They attach it to the woman's waist, and they call that a penis. They run a thing through it so you can pee standing up, which is like the holy grail to all these.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. And
here's the thing: this'll kill you, right? So often they take it from the arm. You know, I once saw a photograph of a penis that had been taken from a young woman's arm, and of course, all these young women are also self-harmers. You know. And on this false penis that was about to be attached, you could see all the razor marks from self-harm scars that were previously on her arm. I mean, this is what we're dealing with, and no one really realizes how crazy this is.
You make a distinction between the officer who arrested you, who you say, we've talked this entire show about how polite they are and how nice they are, and the system that arrested you. Do you know the name of the person that made the decision to arrest you?
No, I don't.
Who do you suspect, broadly speaking?
Oh, I think. Well, just the guy who interviewed me. Like he was in charge. The thing is, every police officer, this requires a tiny bit of history, but about half a century ago, a bunch of guys killed a young black guy who was waiting outside a bus stop. It was the Stephen Lawrence case, and it was a hugely convulsive moment in UK history. And during it, the police were described as institutionally racist. Okay, now this was incredibly traumatizing for the police, and it was clear they realized that whatever happens, we must never be called this again, and so a group called Stonewall, who's like the big gay group in the UK, they went to the police and they offered training so that they could avoid these types of things. And they told the police that some men are actually women if they say they are, so men should be allowed to. And they told the police all this stuff that wasn't true, as the recent Supreme Court judgment showed. And so the police are now going around in the UK with a completely different version of what the law is, And so, I mean, we sit there, we say these things like me saying the trans activists smell, something I would never in a million years have thought would have got me arrested, even in the UK. And yet, there it is, you know? And so, essentially what you have is a kind of a, it's very authoritarian in the sense that you just don't know which one will get you arrested.
You don't know.
Yeah.
There's no equality under the law.
There's no consistency.
There's no consistency. When you look back on that day, what stays with you more? Because you weren't afraid.
Yeah.
You said you weren't afraid. The humiliation or the realization that speech has become policed?
It wasn't a humiliation, really. I fell asleep because I just got off a flight and I didn't have business class. The cell was the first nice place I'd had to sleep, so I fell asleep for
Where were you coming from again?
Most of the day. From Phoenix.
From Phoenix to the United Kingdom.
Yeah. And so I fell asleep for most of the day. And then when I woke up, they brought me for the interview. And again, the reason I'm never scared about these things is because they have no arguments. And I'd actually been longing for an opportunity to sit across the table from someone like a policeman and ask him why he believes the crazy things he does, you know?
It's almost like you're a journalist and you're want to tell the public what you see.
Yeah, they embedded me. They embedded me in prison.
You became a participant in the story that you were covering.
Exactly. I'm sure you're very comfortable with that.
I'm aware of that. And how long were you in the jail?
Just for a day, until they realized that my blood pressure was so high I was about to have a stroke.
So you were under pressure, stress from this?
Yeah, I think it might have been self-inflicted in the sense that I was, I was very angry, obviously, but also I was very excited about writing this piece. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have access to my devices.
You and I are very similar in that sense, I think. If you've been through it as many times as I have, it kind of numbs but breaking a big story is always a motivation.
Yeah.
Telling the story, I think people underestimate just how powerful that is.
Yes.
Because that's not how they operate. That's not what they do.
Yeah.
And you're a writer.
Yeah.
Do you believe comedians now self-censor in ways that could have been unimaginable a generation ago?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I really resent all the older comedians who are fine with it, who pay lip service to, we've all changed and we now know so much more about trans people and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, you shut up. You spent the whole of your career dressing up as women, and now you're pulling up the ladder after you and saying that people can't make fun of whatever they're allowed to make fun of.
Do you see the Dave Chappelle ones on Netflix in recent years?
I absolutely love them, except for I haven't seen the last one.
How is he allowed to get away with all that?
Because he's just a guy with a microphone, and his overheads are very low. Whereas mine, I needed a crew, actors.
I see.
Like agents to return my calls, all that sort of stuff.
Low overhead equals high independence.
Exactly.
As they say.
That's it.
Do you think the internet has, by and large, made debate more open? Or do you think it created the perfect machine for this mob ideological enforcement?
Well, actually, I write about this in my book. My feeling is that I used to think the internet would mean there would never be another Holocaust, because we all had the panopticon now, and no Hitler could rise up and start causing trouble. And now I realize that's so untrue. And not only could we have the Holocaust, the people who committed it will wear GoPros and film it and be proud of it, as they did on October 7th, So I feel like what's happened, instead of us becoming more aware of unfairness and evil, we're just becoming more used to it. When CCTV cameras were introduced in the UK, there was a study done. It was a really bad little area, and they put a CCTV camera in it. And apparently all the crime disappeared because of the camera. But then, after a few weeks, it just started up again. People just got used to the camera being there. And that's what I feel we're in now. We're in a completely... what is the word? My vocabulary is disappearing today. But, we're in a world surrounded by recording devices, and it doesn't seem to be changing our
making society more virtuous.
Our worse impulses, yeah.
It doesn't seem
Yeah.
to be changing, our worst impulses.
Yeah.
Well, it's like incentives govern human behavior more than doing the virtuous thing or right thing. People are governed by incentives. They're
Sure.
governed by their own self-interest. And even in the work that we do, we catch people on tape. It doesn't seem in Washington, D.C. to deter people from being braggadocious, or it's outside their experience that someone would film them.
Yeah.
They even say to us, "Oh, there's this guy out there, O'Keefe, recording. I'm glad you're not him." It's completely...
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Crazy.
It was like when Matt Walsh wore that ridiculous wig.
Yes.
During the film. How did that work?
They never recognize me. I actually think I'm going to wear a shirt that says, "I am secretly recording you." And is that going to stop them from...
Yeah.
So, and your name of the book is Tough Crowd,
Yeah.
How I Made and Lost a Career in Comedy. When did that book come out?
Oh, about 2 years ago now, 3 years
Two
ago.
years ago.
Hidden in all good bookshops.
Hidden, yeah. Especially in the UK. Is it banned from bookstores?
All the staff just hide it and
They
say
just
it's
hide
not there.
Yeah, there it is. Tough Crowd, How I Made and Lost a Career in Comedy. Was it worth it?
Oh yeah.
It was worth it.
Yeah, if I have helped even one family avoid giving their kids cross-sex hormones, or if I've made one woman feel a little less crazy because, she's been told that a man in her dressing room is actually a woman, then yeah. of
Have
course.
anyone reached out to you?
Oh, loads of people. Yeah.
So you have inspired people directly. They've reached out to you.
Oh yeah,
individually.
Yeah, and I've saved kids from doing it. I know.
Have they called you?
Yeah.
You've had conversations. You've had conversations with them on the phone.
No, in person.
In person.
Yeah, I go to various like pro-feminist or. It's a hard thing because feminism means different things in different ways. But in the UK, the real heroes who've been fighting against this are the radical feminists. And when you hear radical, you think they believe in all this stuff, but they don't. Radical they're actually second generation feminists who just believe all this stuff is raising men to a level where they're hurting women, and somehow the UK is one of the few countries that launched a real fight back against this stuff. In Ireland, do you know what self-ID is?
Remind us.
Self-ID is basically you get a form from the government, you say, I'm a woman, they send you a form that says you're a woman, you're now a woman. You don't need to dress as a woman, you don't need any of this stuff. Self-ID is now the law of the land in Ireland. It was introduced in 2015. No one had a clue what it meant. It just got through. And now there's men in women's prisons, some famous cases in Limerick Women's Prison, and a very psychotic man has just been released from Limerick Prison, and he can now walk into a female-only space behind any Irish woman, right? That all happened before anyone even knew what was going on. But in the UK, all the feminists there, they saw it. And they said, we're not having that. And so there's been just a fantastic, they call it Turf Island. And the UK has just been...
Call it what?
Turf Island.
Turf.
Turf means, again, it's another slur that's meaningless, but trans-exclusionary radical feminist. And it doesn't even make sense because they don't exclude women, even if those women call themselves trans, Sorry.
Do you think the public is becoming more willing to challenge this now, or are they becoming more afraid?
No, more willing. I think it's definitely turning. But I don't know. There's some unfinished business, I think. There's a lot of women who need apologies. There's a lot of people who shouldn't be in the job they're in. We've had things like a bloke who was the head of a rape crisis centre in Edinburgh and didn't tell anybody he was a bloke. And then when...
Bloke, pardon my ignorance, means man.
Yes, sorry.
In British.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's all these things.
And what is there a similar term for a woman?
I guess bird.
Bird. Bloke and bird.
Bloke and bird, yeah. But there's just been all sorts of the most... And also women have had their time and money wasted for the last 10 years fighting stuff they won over 100 years ago. I mean, we're not even talking about any kind of advanced feminism. We're literally talking about fair sports, single-sex spaces. Do you know what I mean? Anything that differentiates women from either a man with an idea in his head or a doormat,
Do you think the hardest thing you lost through all this was What exactly?
Well, what was it? I don't know. I did like being married. I like being a married man. I thought that was a nice state to be in. You know.
I don't mean to make this too personal. And the reason I'm asking this question is because I think it's the issue. It's the center. It's the center issue that is that cuts through every person I interview, whether it be Tommy Robinson or Yeonmi Park or even myself, just anybody. I just find it fascinating, and I think it is the issue at hand that you lost your wife.
Sure.
And again, if you're not comfortable answering this, I understand. I don't mean to make it's not meant to be a personal question. It's meant to be central to this issue in society where you have to speak the truth. Is it because you need to find a partner that for lack of a better way of putting it, is willing to go to proverbial jail with you? A better partner, or is it?
No, it wasn't quite. What is it? It's like, you see, I would not have asked her to go through that if I knew it was going to happen. I genuinely thought everyone would go, oh, hang on, what are they doing to kids? You know, what are they telling younger?
But now that you know what, I hear you. But you didn't know that was going to happen. But now that you know the reality of the world and the way of the world, and that...
Oh, I only want to surround myself with people... You know, it's like I have a joke in the book about Anne Frank, you know. There was an actress playing Anne Frank, Pia Zadora. I don't know if you remember her. She was a bombshell actress in the 70s. And this turned out to not be a true story, but it's illustrative of something. She was playing Anne Frank on a stage production. And she was so bad, this is the story, that when the Germans came in to arrest her, someone in the audience shouted, "She's in the attic." Okay, I don't want to be surrounded by people who go, "He's in the attic." You know, if they won't protect you when all they face is a bunch of lunatics online, then how do you know they'll protect you when the stormtroopers come in through the door?
I think that's more profound than most people realize. But it's sometimes you have to go through this to fully understand that.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to your partner in life, that's something that I suppose if you knew this well beforehand, perhaps finding someone who was willing to not throw you in the or rat on you, I suppose.
I don't want to talk too ill of her because she was dragged into it against her will or knowledge.
But anybody that, like, even in my life that I marry.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even want to think. Sometimes you don't want to think about it.
Yeah, I know what you
mean. You want to be an idealist, but you want to believe in these things of truth and goodness and the right thing. But
I tell you, every single person in this fight, like the vast majority, I've heard from them that their other half doesn't understand it. Oh, why can't you leave them alone? You know, they're just trying to be themselves and all this stuff. They do not understand the issue. They don't understand that if you let a man into a women-only space, it ceases to be a women-only space.
You really have to be with someone who understands the issue.
I guess, yes, on this one, definitely.
Both the issue and the consequences. I'm just interpreting what you're saying and repeating it back to you in my own words. Understands the issue and the consequences for being honest about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you're with the person that doesn't, then it's just there's going to be this lack of equilibrium. There's going to be this divorce. Literally sometimes.
But also, it's great to meet women who don't know anything about it because I get to be a normal person.
Maybe to go on a date with.
Oh, yeah.
But not necessarily to marry.
No.
And to have a family with.
But, you know, I mean, that's all behind me now. I'm 57. I'm not really looking to reproduce. But, you know, I'm glad now to be surrounded by people who I can trust and who like me and also who I know, you know, just get it. I mean, I do think we're in the middle of an emergency. You know, the trans phenomenon is basically a mass delusion spread by the internet. And it's proved that we have no defenses against that. So this one was pretty bad. There's a lot of kids who are going to be affected by this forever, right? But bad as it is, you know, there might be something around the corner that's even worse, you know? And I see a little trace of it in that guy who someone threw a bomb over his head and shouted Allahu Akbar or whatever, and he's talking about welcoming immigrants, you know? It's like, what do you need? What do you need to show you got to...
This picture here.
Oh, that's Stephanie Hayden, yeah.
There she is. There's Stephanie.
Please don't say she.
He's
a
she, whatever.
He's
It
very
looks
much
like
a he.
dude, that's for sure.
He's a thug.
Man, probably watching this. Last question. What would you say to someone watching this and who sees what happened to you, listen to what you just said and goes,
Not for
I
me.
better stay quiet?
Yeah. I will say one thing about this whole thing is that once you take a step like the one I took, it's changed me completely in the sense that, you know, I'm not really afraid of much. Does that make sense? I'm afraid of the normal things like dying and stuff like that, but once you've been so thoroughly slapped around, you know, you just kind of think, well, they've done everything they could to me and I'm still standing. So I'm pretty proud of myself. I'm really enjoying my life in Arizona. Yeah, I would say but I will say one thing though. If you are starting to, more Jordan Peterson wisdom, get a different source of income. Don't rely on one source of income. If you can do two things and make money at the second thing, make sure that will survive even if you come out. Because if you've got any kind of business that has a public front-facing aspect, they will try and destroy it, you know.
Very good advice. Fearlessness and resilience. You're very resilient, and you have a kind of superpower now.
That's
that
it.
Not much is going to faze you when you survive that type of abuse from the state. But also pragmatically, income. That's what they're going to try. That's what they want to take away from you. Destroy your livelihood.
Yeah.
So that's very, very, very good advice. And we're about wrapped here. But what was your favorite part of today's conversation?
Today's conversation?
Yeah.
Just me and you, James. I mean, I had so many suppositions about you because of the way you were being portrayed by all the crazy websites I was visiting, and it's just nice to meet you. You know, I've had my opinion changed on so many people in this fight, and I've met so many conservatives, and they've all been, almost without exception, the most polite, nicest, most smartest people I've talked to.
Well, other than present company, was there any highlight of someone you met in the conservative space that you really liked?
Oh yeah, Peterson. I'm a neighbor.
Wow.
And I've been to his birthday party, and
Really?
I've gone out and I've eaten like piles of meat at his favorite meat restaurant.
He only eats meat, right?
Yeah, at his favorite steak
Is it
restaurant.
lamb or steak or all of it? Or
Just everything, as long as it's meat. It's so funny. But he turned out to be just as charming and thoughtful. And
I'm reading his book, Those Who Wrestle with God.
yeah, is it good?
It's unbelievable.
Yeah?
It's unbelievable. I recommend it heavily. And this is your Substack?
Oh yeah. That's
The
it.
Glinner? What does that mean?
The Glinner update. Glinner is just my Twitter name.
Twitter.
Yeah.
Is there a meaning behind that?
No, it's just a shortened G. Linehan.
And this is the Substack, so everyone can subscribe. And
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you. Very nice to meet
and
you.
I wish you the best, and we'll stay in touch.
Excellent.
What is
Thank
your
you.
price? Because if your price is not your life, then you are for sale.